4 in the morning. Kinshasa. The greatest fighter alive was walking toward the ring, and somewhere behind him, in a small concrete room that smelled of sweat and fear, his own corner had already whispered the word no one says out loud. Funeral. They didn't think he could win. They thought he could die. The night Ali chose to die. Let's go back. The year is 1974, and the man the world called the greatest was, in the eyes of nearly everyone, already finished. Muhammad Ali was 32 years old. Old in a young man's sport. He had lost 3.5 years of his prime. Not to injury, not to defeat, but to a government that stripped his title, took his license, and tried to send him to a jungle war he refused to fight. When he came back, the lightning in his legs was dimmer, slower. He'd been beaten by Joe Frazier. He'd had his jaw broken by Ken Norton. The dance was still there, but it flickered now, like a bulb about to burn out. And waiting for him, across an ocean, in the humid dark of Central Africa, stood a monster. His name was George Foreman. Not the smiling man who would one day sell grills to America. In 1974, George Foreman was the most terrifying human being on the planet. 40 fights, 40 wins, 37 knockouts. He had destroyed Joe Frazier, the same Frazier who beat Ali, and he hadn't just beaten him, he'd lifted him off the canvas with the force of his punches. 6 knockdowns in 2 rounds, Frazier's body flying like a rag doll. Foreman didn't win fights. He ended men. The heavy bags he trained on had dents in them, not marks, dents. A depression in the leather shaped like his fist, because no bag on earth could take that power and stay whole. And this was the man Muhammad Ali had agreed to face. The world was afraid for him. Not afraid he'd lose. Afraid he'd be hurt. Truly, permanently hurt. The great sports writers, the ones who loved him, wrote it plainly. They feared for his life. Norman Mailer thought he might be killed in the ring. Ali was a 4-1 underdog, and in the shadows the real number felt longer than that. At the pre-fight physical, a doctor pulled a reporter aside. Quietly, so Ali wouldn't hear. Make sure there's a good ambulance ready. This is the one where we might lose a fighter. That was the mood. That was the truth in the air of Kinshasa. And here is what almost no one knows. Ali's own corner felt it too. In the days before the fight, the men closest to him, his trainers, his cornermen, the ones who had wrapped his hands for years, spoke in low voices when he wasn't in the room. They had watched the Foreman tapes. They had seen Frazier fly. They had done the math that fear does. And in their hearts, some of them had already begun to grieve. Not for a loss. For him. Imagine that. Imagine being the greatest, the loudest, the most alive man in any room, and knowing, somewhere underneath the noise, that the people who loved you most were quietly bracing to carry your body out. Ali knew. Of course he knew. He read men the way other men read newspapers. He saw it in their eyes. He heard it in the pauses. He felt the funeral in the room. And he said nothing. The night before the fight, Ali did not sleep much. Picture him, alone, a single lamp, the African heat pressing against the windows like a living thing. He was a man of God, and that night the prayers came differently. Not let me win. Something quieter, something more honest. Let me not be afraid. Because here is the secret the posters never told you. Muhammad Ali was afraid. He admitted it later in his own words. On the walk to the ring, in the tunnel, in the roar, a voice inside him was screaming to run, screaming that this was the night the monster finally caught him. The bravest man in the world was terrified, and he walked toward the monster anyway. That is courage, not the absence of fear, the refusal to obey it. 4:30 in the morning, October the 30th. 60,000 voices in the dark, a chant rising from the crowd like something out of scripture. Ali, Bumai, Ali, Bumai, Ali, kill him. But the men in Ali's corner weren't thinking about killing. They had one prayer, and it was simpler. Survive. Just survive. Move, dance, stay away from those hands, and pray you're still standing at the end. That was the plan. The only sane plan. Run. And in the very first round, Muhammad Ali threw the entire plan into the fire. He didn't run. He walked to the center of the ring, and he did the one thing no human being was supposed to do to George Foreman. He led with his right hand, straight down the middle, into the face of the most dangerous puncher who ever lived. It was an insult. It was a provocation. It was, by every measure of boxing wisdom, insane. And then, in the second round, he did something worse. He walked to the ropes. He leaned back against them. He put his arms up. He covered his head. And he invited George Foreman, the man who dented steel, the man who made Frazier fly, to hit him. Again, and again, and again. In the corner, they came apart. Angelo Dundee, his trainer, screaming through the ropes, "Get off the ropes! Dance! Get out of there!" To them, they were watching it happen. The nightmare. The prophecy coming true. Ali, pinned in the corner, taking the full weight of Foreman's fury on his body, his ribs, his arms, his head. They thought they were watching a man being beaten to death in real time. They didn't understand. Ali understood. This was not surrender. This was the most dangerous gamble in the history of the sport, and Ali was making it with his own body as the stake. He had looked at the monster and seen the one thing everyone else had missed. Foreman was volcanic, but a volcano burns out. All that power, all that fury, cost fuel. And in the suffocating African heat, every punch Foreman threw was a match struck against his own strength. So Ali offered himself as the wall. "Hit me," his body said. "Hit me until you have nothing left. I will take everything you have, because I have decided I would rather absorb your fury than run from it." Every thud against his ribs was a calculation. Every blow he swallowed was a withdrawal from Foreman's tank. He was letting himself be hit. A man they feared might die. As a strategy, as an act of will so total it looked, from the outside, like a man choosing his own execution. The corner screamed. The world held its breath. And round by round, punch by punch, the monster began to tire. By the fifth round, something impossible was happening. Foreman's punches were slowing. His arms hung heavier. The dense steel power was leaking out of him, drained into Ali's flesh and swallowed by the humid dark. And Ali, the old man, the underdog, the one they'd measured for a coffin, leaned back on those ropes and did something that broke Foreman's spirit before his body ever fell. He talked to him. Leaning into the storm, taking the blows, Ali whispered into Foreman's ear, "Is that all you got, George? They told me you could punch. Show me something. Imagine the horror of that. You are the most feared man alive. You are hitting a man with everything you have, everything that destroyed everyone before him, and he is still standing, still covering, still watching you with those calm, terrible eyes. And he is not impressed. The 8th round. Foreman was empty, a great engine run dry. His arms were lead. His legs were sand. He had spent every ounce of the fury that made him a god, and he had poured it all into a man who simply would not fall. And now it was Ali's turn. He came off the ropes. The lightning, the old lightning, the ghost of the young man they said was gone, flickered back to life one last time, a left, a right, a combination so fast and so clean it seemed to come from another year, another Ali. Foreman turned, staggered, and went down. The most terrifying man on earth fell to the canvas like a tower coming down, and the referee counted him out. 60,000 voices exploded into the African night, and Muhammad Ali, the man his own corner had quietly grieved, the man the doctors had prepared an ambulance for, the man who had walked toward a monster while terror screamed in his ears, stood in the center of the ring, champion again, against everything, against everyone, against fear itself. But here is the part that matters, the part that has nothing to do with boxing. Ali did not win that night because he was stronger. Foreman was stronger. He did not win because he was younger. Foreman was younger. He did not win because he was safer. He chose the single most dangerous path available to any fighter. He chose to be hit on purpose by the hardest hands alive. He won because he had made peace with something most of us spend our whole lives running from. He had accepted that he might not walk out of that ring, and having accepted it, having stood in the same room as his own funeral and refused to look away, he was free. Free of the fear that beats most men before the first punch is ever thrown. We build our lives around avoiding the thing Ali walked straight into, the failure, the humiliation, the end. We stay on our feet and dance and run, because running feels like surviving. But Ali knew a deeper secret. Sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is stop running, to lean back against the ropes of his own life, to let the worst arrive, to absorb it, and to trust that on the other side of the fury, when the monster has spent itself against your will, there is a door. His corner planned a funeral. He walked into it and came out a king. They remember the punches, the knockout, the chant in the dock. But the real fight was won in a small room the night before, under a single lamp, when a terrified man decided he would rather die standing in front of the monster than live having run from it. The world called it the rumble in the jungle. But it was never really about George Foreman. It was about the oldest opponent any of us will ever face. The voice that says run. Ali heard it. Ali felt it. Ali was more afraid than anyone will ever know. And he walked toward the monster anyway. That's not a boxing story. That's the bravest thing a human being can do.